Welcome, everybody. Thank you for coming out tonight. This is the 2024 Fort Collins Community Housing Summit. My name is John Singleton, and I am the current chair of the Affordable Housing Board. I volunteered for this board 4 or 5 years ago now, I believe, mostly because I wanted to help build a more inclusive community, and I believe that affordable housing is one of the first major steps we can take to building a more welcoming community. Hey. Tonight, we're going to review some of the complex housing systems that we have here in Fort Collins, and we'll review the city's housing strategic plans, vision, and goals, and even ask everyone in here to rate us on our progress and the process that we've gone through and some of the efforts that's been made. Great work has been done, but we all know that more needs to be done. We will also look at some of how the plan recognizes the challenges that we have, and we are going to try to address how we can overcome and achieve the vision that everyone will have healthy, stable, affordable housing. Spoiler alert, we have not solved all the problems. There are plenty more to go, but the city has done, and the community and the members that help and are associated with housing have done an amazing job and put so much effort and heart into trying to do the best they can to meet the needs of the community. So now, real quick plug, if you think like me that housing is really, housing first and affordable housing is really important, I would have to quiz everybody. Thank you. I would have to ask, oh, you didn't change it. There we go. Uh-oh.
The other one. There we go.
Okay, there we go. So, first mistake of the night, moving fast. So if you believe that we need to collectively work towards solutions to create more affordable housing, I would ask everyone to come join us for an affordable housing board meeting the first Thursday of every month at 4 p.m. We have both in-person and online, and everyone is welcome. We have our agendas posted on the city clerk's website. You can see it right here. There's other resources that can be found from there as well. One of the important things is that at the beginning of every single meeting, we have an open forum for community comment or suggestion, but fundamentally what we really want to hear is the struggles that people have and the successes and achievements they've seen to help us make a better community, because our job is to listen and understand and to represent the community with city council and to provide more education and understanding to where people are and the needs that they're experiencing. So now city staff has the really tough challenge of having to share with us all of the data that they've gathered, all the work that they've done, and the information that we need to know in order to facilitate our community conversation that we'll have at the end of this presentation. But most importantly, I am amazed and really thankful at the turnout we've had tonight. It means a whole lot to us, and it means a whole lot to the people that work on this on a regular basis. And it really shows that the community has a great interest in trying to make this the most welcoming place and a great place to call home. So now I'll have Sue Beck-Firkus come up and speak.
Okay, can you hear me? Excellent. Well, I see so many people in this room, so many familiar faces and so many new faces. So thank you so much for joining us tonight. We're here to talk about housing, which is my favorite thing. I am Sue Beck-Firkus. I'm the interim housing manager here at the City of Fort Collins. And a few housekeeping matters before we get too far along. The resource fair will be open till 8 o'clock tonight. The dinner line will be open as long as we need it to be. We are filming this presentation and the presentation only, and that will be posted on our website after tonight. But so don't worry about the man behind the camera. It's all good. Okay? So where to begin? Where to begin with housing? So many of you have been with us on this journey for a long time, right? So we are setting the table for you tonight, setting the table with data, information for your conversation. And we're going to leave time for questions if at all possible. But we do want to make sure that we give you enough time to have the conversations that we are hoping you will enjoy later tonight. Now, A word about data. We're giving you the most recent available. It doesn't all match, it doesn't all line up, but I think what we're looking at is trends, right? We're looking at what's going on, what was, what is, and what could be. So we'll start tonight with talking about, yay, it worked, the city's role, right? Everything we do in the housing sphere is through partnership. And we certainly regulate it, housing and the built environment. We convene and facilitate conversations like we're doing tonight. We do have some funding that makes some of our dreams possible, but you'll hear not all of them. And we're policymakers. And most of our policies end up in plans. We've been doing affordable housing strategic plans since 1999. The plan we're here to talk about tonight, the one we did in 2021, is slightly different because it's holistically looking at the entire housing spectrum and not just the affordable ranges that our previous plans did. And we do this in concert with community, right? Everybody has a role in our housing. We don't build or develop housing, so we rely on community partners to do that. There's a lot of other funders that are needed to bring housing on board. And of course, the consumers of housing, which we all are, is really important. Partnerships, partnerships, partnerships. And then there's a piece that I didn't put on here that I should have, and your policy influencers, just by being here tonight. So we really appreciate that. So the plan's vision is that everyone has healthy, stable housing they can afford. Like I said, this is a little different because we're looking at the whole housing spectrum holistically. We're centering our efforts on equity, and we're connecting the dots between housing and health. So this housing strategic plan recognizes that we have challenges to that vision, that everyone has healthy, stable housing they can afford. And we'll talk about 6 challenges pretty much in depth tonight as we try to connect those dots. We established 26 strategies, and for your conversation, we will give you an implementation tracker that will show you what those strategies are and where we are at the moment with them. That's a moving document, and things could change, but we're giving you an idea about where we are today. A lot of our progress has been in code reform. We're going to talk about that tonight. But we've also made some progress using our land bank program to give us some new units, and also our Metro District policy. So we're using a lot of different ways to try to achieve our goals. And then we did promise we'd come back and have a conversation about it. So that's what we're doing tonight. And thank you again for being here. The overarching affordable housing goal is that 10% of homes be deed-restricted affordable housing at city build-out. Let's break that down a little bit. Homes, apartments, any mobile homes, single-family homes, all homes. Deed-restricted means that there's a legal restriction that you can only use it for affordable housing, so that we can ensure that's going to be its use. And city build-out is the end of the planning horizon, when we have no more land left to develop. And we expect that to be sometime after 2040. We set this goal in 2015 with our affordable housing strategic plan. At that time, we had 5% affordable housing, and guess what? We've moved ever so slowly. We're at 5.5% today. So we have to celebrate any movement in that direction. I wanted to point out that we have a housing dashboard on the city website. And so if you guys are really into it and want to really drill down on the data, we recently updated that dashboard, and you can find it there at the city's website. I just wanted, there at the city's website, I just wanted to make sure you guys knew about this resource. Okay, those challenges. The first one is inequitable impacts. Some people are just more negatively impacted by rising housing costs and discrimination. Lack of inventory. This is true for the entire housing continuum, but especially in the affordable range, there's just not enough housing, and what's available may not be what people want. Not enough funding and incentives. The city does have some tools to help here, but we cannot achieve our goals on our current tools alone. There are more jobs than homes. That means that commuting can be an issue into our community. The cost to construct housing is expensive, and it's getting more so. And then lastly, housing policy. Housing policy has not consistently looked at housing stability or healthy housing, especially for renters. And so these are things that we need to be cognizant of as we implement the plan. This housing continuum chart shows you all of that I talked about. So it starts with people who are unhoused and need housing. That goes from 0 to 30% area median income typically, and that's critical needs housing. Up to 80% area median income is affordable rental homes. We just changed our definition to allow up to 100% for affordable for sale home ownership homes. And then we have market rate and luxury homes that go after that. When you look at this chart, you can see that even a family of 4 making 100% of the area median income, which is a healthy amount, would not have enough money to afford the median home price today. So inventory is a problem at all parts of the spectrum and is part of the story of price escalation. So when we look at median income by race, these two charts, these two lines represent, let's see, yeah, it works. The gray line is the information that was in the plan, and the blue line is the most recent 5-year average from the American Census Survey. And it's important to remember that the blue line probably has a bunch of stimulus money in it, right? And we look at these as snapshots, so we're going to continue to watch this because we don't really think that it's as rosy a picture as this chart might imply. And also, we know that there's been a decline in people's perception of openness and acceptance of the community towards people of diverse backgrounds, according to our own city community survey. So this is just one data point that we're looking at, and we have to keep watching. Now, this is from our original plan, and I know this is kind of a confusing chart, but let's see if I can do this. There we go. This side over here is home prices. This side over here is rental prices. This is a 10-year history from 2010 to 2020. And what you see on this chart is that everything goes up. Rents go up, the townhouse prices go up, the single-family homes go up, and income goes up, but not nearly at the same rate. And then now, taking this further in time from the last chart, you can see that that trend continues and that housing prices continue to go up. And right now, a family making 100% of the area median income would need about 46% of their income to go to housing to afford an area median priced home. We really don't want people spending more than 30 or 35% on housing costs. So this is not where we want to be. We're also losing naturally occurring affordable housing, sometimes called NOAH. Naturally occurring affordable housing is, just by its nature, it's priced about the same as affordable housing would be. So in this case, $1,250 or under. And you can see that as the market is rising, we're losing that naturally occurring stock. But this is an interesting chart because it shows us that of all the units that are being built, things are different than they used to be. So the black, I'm not going to try that. The black line on the bottom shows you single-family homes. The orange bar is multifamily homes. So you can see that we're trending away from single-family homes and building more multifamily homes. Plus, currently, of all the projects that are in our pipeline development in the city, 8.7% are affordable units. So that percentage is going up, which is really exciting to me. More housing types give people more choice in where they want to live. And then this slide. Okay, these are statewide averages from the Colorado Housing and Finance Authority, and it shows over the last 5 years how the cost to build one affordable unit continues to go up and up and up and up and up again, right? It's about $150,000 more a door than it was 5 years ago. So the city does have some funding that we have available for investing in affordable housing. It's usually between 1.5 and 3 million each year. If you use like a middle row of that, 2 million, and an estimate of about 40,000 that we're able to subsidize a unit, that's about 50 units a year. And that will not help us achieve our goals, which is more like 282 a year, according to the plan. Here are some examples of homes that we have invested in. Mason Place is permanent supportive housing that meets that critical need, up to 30% area median income. There's 60 units there. Then Village on Horsetooth was built on a land bank parcel. We have 96 homes, 1, 2, 3, and 4 bedroom affordable rentals. And then Bird Whistle was townhomes, 54 2 and 3 bedroom, for sale community land trust model homes in the south part of town. When we talk about our investment in building, it's very important. Our funding is critical and very often is the first in funding, which can be really important in leveraging and attracting other funds. But this is just an example of a $25 million project and all the different funding sources it would take to build that project. And don't get confused by the acronyms for all the different funding sources, because those actually change. Each project has its own funding stack. But what's important in this slide are the blue lines. That's what the city's investment is. So while critically important, you can see it must be leveraged, and it must be leveraged a lot in order for us to achieve our goals. So with that, I'm going to pass it over to Sylvia to talk more about the Housing Strategic Plan. We can talk about
All right, move this down a little bit. Hey, everyone. It's so nice to see everybody out here tonight. My high school English teacher is in the back of the room, so I better get this right. Hi, Mark. So as Sue mentioned, I'm Sylvia Tatman-Burris, and I was part of the original team that worked on the Housing Strategic Plan. It was a great team, and it's really wonderful to see everyone here tonight really having this discussion of how are we doing, how are we moving forward, how are we delivering on those strategies and challenges that we came up with during the plan creation. So this is really, really fun to see. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit tonight about these 26 strategies. And I work actually in the city manager's office. I was in the planning department, but I'm still really heavily involved in this work. And part of what I want to talk to you about tonight is when we talk about the 26 strategies that were created for the plan within, sorry, I guess I need to move my mouse. There we go. Okay, so we established 26 strategies within these 6 outcome areas. And what I want to really point to is that to really get these strategies going and to move these forward, to work on those challenges that Sue mentioned, these need to be moved forward across many different departments at the city. And so a lot of the work that we do is really trying to integrate the language of housing and affordable housing into all departments across the city, because it's going to take everyone, including everyone at the city, to move these forward and be thinking about these topics and these strategies and challenges with everything that we do. And so I really like still working on this process and will be for the foreseeable future. So right now we've got 16 strategies that have been completed. And when we say completed, it doesn't mean that those challenges have necessarily been overcome, especially as you've seen from what Sue talked about. But those strategies that have been completed are some things that either we've tried to remove some barriers to the creation of affordable housing, which we'll talk about in a minute, or we stood up a program, or we're talking about something, or we're moving something forward that will help to break down some of those barriers and challenges. One of the examples that I'll talk about in a minute is Council's adoption of Phase 1 of the Land Use Code. And you may talk about that a little bit at your tables tonight. The Land Use Code is just one tool that is used and is utilized within the creation of affordable housing. And again, is something that is used to review all development in Fort Collins. And so some of the things that were accomplished there is the extension of the minimum affordability term. Sue mentioned that a little bit ago, from 20 years to 60 years. It means that those affordable housing units must be in perpetuity or through 60 years when those are created. And then we refine the affordable housing definitions to make those clearer. And then for the creation of those code-based incentives to make affordable housing easier, to remove some of those barriers to the creation of that housing. And then there are 7 strategies that we're really actively in process right now. So one of those examples is putting in the regulations that would comply with some of the state laws that have gone into effect. Those include the accessory dwelling units policy that the state passed this last year. So I'll talk about that too in a few minutes. Again, you'll talk about some of these strategies in more depth at your tables, and really look forward to hearing more of that conversation. So in terms of the challenges that Sue talked about before, really within challenges 2 and 4, that's really the Phase 1 accomplishments of the Land Use Code. And so some of those examples of the things that were changed there was some of the housing capacity was increased, and new and different housing types were created in zone districts all across the city. There were incentives for increases in existing projects for housing across the board, and then some reduced parking minimums for some of the units in multifamily projects. And then in terms of affordable housing specifically, there were some new incentives and some reduced requirements in the code, including parking reduction, some height bonuses, meaning as those developers were able to create larger buildings, they were able to do that if they included some affordable housing. And then, again, the length of the affordability term was increased from 20 years, as it was before, to 60 years. And then more projects can qualify as affordable at those 60%, 80%, and 100% area median income levels. And so that offers some flexibility and the ability for developers to create different housing types. And so what we're working on right now, I'm on the team to implement changes within Phase 2 of the Land Use Code. You may have talked to some folks in the resource fair about that upcoming project. And what we're really focused on there are these areas in the employment and commercial areas of the city. And what we mean are some of those large arterials along Harmony, College, and any of those larger arterials where there's traffic, where there's different types of multimodal travel, like bikes, transit, things like that, is where we're focusing our efforts in this phase of code changes. Trying to really move some of that increase in density and intensity within those transit areas to create more of these 15-minute cities that I'll talk about here in a second around some of City Council's priorities as well. The idea of 15-minute cities is that people in those residential neighborhoods have pretty easy or close access to commercial areas so that you could ride your bike, perhaps walk, take transit easily to things like grocery stores, retail establishments, things like that. And then again, implementation of those recent state legislative requirements that I'll talk about here in a second. So some of the council priorities really relate to this work that we'll be taking part in Phase 2. And that's going to be around city resources still to preserve and create affordable housing, advancing those 15-minute city concepts, and then pursuing an integrated approach to economic health, because certainly some of these commercial areas need that integrated help to assist with folks to have their small businesses, to preserve those small businesses, and to remove barriers to them being established and staying there. So under challenges 2, 4, and 6, these really relate to some of those state legislation that was passed mostly this past year. And so House Bill 1313 deals with what TOD stands for is transit-oriented development. And that's, again, sort of moving density to those transit corridors. And so we're trying to come up with strategies to do that, and there is some incentives to move towards greater density of 40 units per acre along these high-frequency transit areas. There's a map that's been put out by the state, and our staff is working with the state to move towards that compliance with that House bill. As I mentioned before, the accessory dwelling units, those through House Bill 1152, those are to be permitted everywhere that single unit and duplex dwellings are allowed. And so that's something we're moving towards compliance within the city as well. And then no minimum parking requirements for any of those multifamily. And when we talk about multifamily, those are those buildings anywhere from duplexes to larger apartment buildings. Those are considered basically multifamily, and then mixed-use development along those transit corridors. Mixed-use development, we're sort of referring to commercial mixed with residential. And then many of you also know about House Bill 1007. That was an occupancy bill that passed that got rid of occupancy limits in Fort Collins, also known as U+2. And that happened July 1 of this last year. And so with that, just really appreciate having these discussions. Again, would love for you also to be able to participate in phase 2 of the land use code. There's a website, there's gonna be a lot of engagement coming up, especially in October. And so would love to have you participate in those, and would love to hear how the conversation on that and any questions that come up at your table discussions tonight. So with that, I'm gonna turn it over to Alyssa. She's gonna talk to you about our rental housing programs. Thanks.
All right, I hate standing still, so we're going to see how this goes. Hello, everyone. It is so nice to be with you here tonight. I'm actually, can I just take this out? Is anyone going to? Oh, yeah. Yeah, look, everybody's audience participation. I love it. All right, so my name's Alyssa Stevens. I am the rental housing manager for the city of Fort Collins, and I am very excited to be in front of you today because I can truthfully say that my job and my department exists because of the Housing Strategic Plan. When we look at one of the graphs that I love to show when I talk about rental housing, we have about 50% of our households that are renter occupied. So we're talking about a huge chunk of our community. And we often talk about people who maybe rent who want to buy someday, and that's a really important part of our community. But we also have a huge chunk of our community that rent by choice. They like the amenities, they like the locations, they want the convenience of not having to deal with a yard, a water heater breaking. I'm not talking from personal experience at all. These are just things that happen to people. So when we think about policy decisions and what it looks like to have healthy, affordable housing for our whole entire community, that means really thinking about renters and rental programming as something that is part of that affordable housing strategy, but not just about for-purchase housing. We really need separate policies and programs that speak specifically to renters. So ooh, that was the wrong direction. They trick you with this top button. You just want to. So when we think about strategies to support rental housing, about a year ago, City Council passed a new ordinance requiring most rental properties in the city to register once a year with the city and pay a small registration fee. That is kind of one piece of our rental housing program, but it's really kind of opened the door for this bigger conversation about what does it look like for the city to support rental housing. So you may or may not know that the city for a long time, more than 20 years, has provided complaint-based inspections for renters. So if you're having issues with a rental property and you think it's not meeting our minimum standards, we can have a city inspector come out and check that property and make sure that those minimum standards are being met. This program has now a dedicated rental inspector whose only job is to work with landlords and tenants on making sure that properties are cared for, that they're being kept up to those minimum standards, which is really exciting. We've also been working a lot in the education and incentive space. So really thinking about how do we make sure that our landlords and our tenants are familiar with state law and how that relates to tenants and landlords, with the requirements that they're supposed to be meeting, and how are they working together to be taking care of our rental housing stock. And as well, thinking about what types of grants and incentives can we offer for rental housing. We have financial incentives that we're investing in for purchase affordable housing. So what does it look like to provide some of those incentives as well for our rental housing stock? I did it again, you guys. I pressed the wrong button again. I knew it, and I did it anyway. Okay, so we really are excited about the benefits that this is going to bring to our community. Number one, a registration system is opening up two-way communication between landlords and the city of Fort Collins. Once a year, it's a checkpoint, an opportunity for the city to say, hey, here are some things that you should know. And also an opportunity for those folks to have a central point in the city to bring ideas, concerns, and for us to be advocating for policies that make sense for our community here. It's going to give us better data about what our rental housing stock looks like so that we can stand up in front of you here next time and give you some really fun and interesting data about what our rental housing stock looks like, because we don't know a whole lot now. And overall, it's increasing that access to education and resources for that huge chunk of our community that rents or is providing rental housing. So just an exciting little tidbit for us. I could talk for a whole entire hour on registration and inspections. I won't do that tonight, but you are more than welcome to come and find me, chat with me, ask me questions. But one of the things that I am very, very excited to be able to share with you tonight is that we have been able to put our money where our mouth is, so to speak. So over the past few months, we have invested over $200,000 in repairs for rental properties. And those are federal dollars that we were able to allocate to making sure that windows are opening and closing in properties, that decks are safe, that electrical work is safe, that properties are becoming more efficient, more climate friendly, safer, and more comfortable for people to live in. So it's been a really exciting opportunity for us to partner with some of our local property management companies, our local property owners, and invest directly in the rental stock. That money is not going directly to the property owner, it's not going to the renter, it's being paid to contractors who are doing the work, and these are upgrades that are going to last for 20 to 50 years in these rental properties. So it's a really exciting thing. We are hoping to be able to continue this. As with many things in affordable housing, the big challenge with this is where do the dollars come from? And so we will be working on that. And again, hopefully the next time I stand in front of you, I'm able to talk to you about all the amazing grants that the city has gotten to support not just affordable for purchase housing, but also affordable rental housing. And with that, I will pass it back over.
Okay, we talked a lot about challenges. What about opportunities? We have a lot of those too. And before I get to them, I just want to thank you for participating in our human heat map. When you walked in the door, the engagement activity. And it shows us, take a look at it as you leave, that we have a really good room full of a lot of different people living in a lot of different places in a lot of different ways. So take a peek and thank you for participating in that. So we do have new and growing funding sources at the state and federal level that we will certainly be trying to bring to our city, things like Proposition 123, the first statewide affordable housing fund that voters passed just a few years ago. And we do have some state grants that we're looking at for ADUs, for low-income homeowners, and all sorts of different opportunities that we are looking at and trying to access. The state legislative requirements have helped us implement some of the things that we've been trying to do in our code. The housing mix that we talked about, that's pretty cool because we're starting to see a lot more non-single family housing being developed. And that again brings choice, right? And then housing is just such an important consideration at the community and council priority level, at the county level, at the state level. This bug wants to get involved. At the federal level, right? So we're all really focused and talking about housing in a way that we have not in the past. And I think that is a big opportunity. And of course, working and learning together is really the best way to make progress. So with that, we're going to have a little opportunity for questions and answers. You guys give us the questions or the answers, and we'll try to help on the other side. Alyssa, are you willing to walk around? And then Noah, if you would come up, we have a land use code expert. So we have about 15 minutes now if we want to use it for questions and answers. If we don't have any questions, we can move on to the conversation. So I'll give you a minute or two to think about that. Good, we have a question.
Thank you. We have been seeing a lot of the messaging around phase 2 of the land use code, how it doesn't involve housing, and we're curious why it's being messaged that way, and if there is an opportunity to kind of fold housing conversations into the second phase of the land use code.
Okay, I'll repeat the question around why is messaging around land use code and phase 2 of those revisions and updates being sort of messaged as not including housing? And I am curious where that message came from, but so it does include housing. So I want to make sure that that is something that is part of those revisions. The focus, though, has shifted to really changes within those commercial corridors. And so phase 1 focused on housing sort of across the board within the land use code and any of the barriers that were seen to the creation of different types of housing and deed-restricted affordable housing. And so phase 2 is going to still focus on housing density, removing barriers to increases in density and housing along those transit corridors, but it's going to focus more on commercial development as well. Just thank you.
Good, we have some more questions.
Yeah, I was wondering if there's been any work done or there's any possibility of incentivizing landlords or investors who have rental properties that are using them for, say, short-term or Airbnb to be encouraged or incentivized to bring those into the affordable housing rental market.
I could answer that from right here. There's not anything that's been done yet, and part of it is that the rental housing program is still like less than a year old, and so there's still a lot of work to build out what it looks like and what it means and where the city should be investing our money. So I think that that's a possibility. I will say that it is less expensive to register a rental property than it is to have a license for a short-term rental. So on that front, there is a slight incentive already in place to register long-term as opposed to a short-term rental license.
So I'm concerned about the parking, that you're eliminating the parking requirements. Do you have any experience with other cities that have had success or not success with the elimination of the parking requirements?
Well, first I'll start, we aren't eliminating the parking, right? The state told us that we need to not require any minimum parking. Is it closer to my mouth? Sorry.
Yeah.
So, yes, as we look at things that we can do, we will look at different organizations or jurisdictions across the state and see if there's any good things that they're doing to at least help people to still put in parking. Most parking, or most projects that we see to get financing will still require them to provide parking. So I don't think we'll see a lot of projects that will come with no parking, but probably less than what we've seen in past.
And no, if I'm right, these are parking, no parking minimums, but people can still put in parking if their community needs it. And most developers look at that and make sure that they're giving the amenities the building will need.
Correct.
There we go. I like that one of the goals of the strategic housing plan is to preserve existing affordable housing. But what I notice is the scrape-offs of a lot of older, smaller houses in town. And I'm not sure if there are any sort of disincentives to that. It seems like that's happening a lot, and those smaller houses are being replaced by giant houses that even the smaller ones now are maybe not that affordable, but they're more affordable than what's replacing them. So I wonder if there's any policy to make that more difficult.
With phase 2, we are working with everybody in the city, all the departments, especially historic preservation, and we'll be working with them to see if we can look at any policies or standards that would help incentivize. Sorry, I got to get closer. Helps incentivize saving those properties. Any other? Yeah, but yeah, I mean that's a good thing for us to be looking for as we go into phase 2.
Hi, my name is San, and I have a question. Like, I'm hearing about these affordable housing and really spaces where the most vulnerable can live, but in actuality, like with the communities that we work with, that affordable housing or the rent lowering things aren't actually made available to the community. So those who are able to rent those locations or to have housing are those who actually have a higher ability to afford and qualify for other things. So we really aren't serving our marginalized community or our BIPOC communities, and that makes it difficult. Like, it sounds so beautiful, but my question is that we're not really reaching the people or bringing those who are the most affected into this conversation. We have one table with mis amigos, del, Maite y todos, but we really aren't just bringing somebody to a summit, but not really a part of the conversation. It just kind of seems like great words, but not really touching those who need it. That's just, I don't know what that question is, but I'm just saying that that's our concern with the communities that we work with.
Well, thank you for that comment. We do have some dedicated permanent supportive housing for people making 30% AMI and less, and we do not have enough. We clearly do not have enough.
I'm a landlord. I own rental properties. I'm one of the few who are trying to keep our properties really clean for those who have allergies to animals, etc. Well, I don't think there's education around here about the ESAs, the emotional support animals, which are really pets. And my experience is that I advertise no pets. Well, somebody who wants a clean house without pets will say, well, I know what to do. I'll just send off an internet for an ESA, and you get it there, and they just plug in your name and the pet's name, and they all say the same thing. But they are spam, they are illegal, but people don't know that. And our homeowners are being blackmailed by being handed one of those ESAs because everybody's afraid of HUD, because HUD can fine you pretty much for various things. But if there is a way that owners don't know, that you can always say those, you don't take those, and you say what we really need is a note from your doctor telling, and signed, telling, or it can be a doctor, a nurse, whoever decides you need an emotional support animal. Well, those aren't brought to us naturally, because renters don't know that they're illegal and they're spam. Companies know to advertise, and people will send $100 and they just email something to us. But I would like the housing people to educate everybody that those ESAs are illegal, they're spam, they're used so that the pet owner doesn't have to pay pet rent, et cetera, because they are supposedly emotionally support animals. You know they're all pets. And we then are forced to take, because the people who are our agents are afraid not to take those in case HUD is going to get after them. And this is a big difficulty for me, who I'm trying to keep my rentals clean for those. My own family is really allergic to cats. But for anybody who wants to have a clean house, I have one, except my agent took one of those ESAs, and now I've got a dog in one of the places that I was trying to keep clean. Can you do anything about educating landlords and tenants that those are spam?
I think Alyssa's chomping at the bit to answer that one.
I want to shout out that we've had some awesome community organizations that have been doing trainings about fair housing for landlords and trainings for tenants as well, on what fair housing is and what it isn't. And so I think that we're continuing to support those community agencies that are already doing that work. We don't want the city to do work that someone else is already doing. And we're trying to figure out where is more of that needed. So thank you. I'm going to keep it real short because we got 800 people in here that want to ask questions.
And we have 2 more questions. We have time for 2 more questions.
This is John McGrath, and I would like to have you tell us what you're doing to protect mobile home parks so they don't get built up in commercial. And is there any thought about taking city-owned land and making an affordable mobile home park so the rent doesn't go up skyrocketing? Thank you.
Mobile homes are a really important housing resource, and we really appreciate that. We used to have policy that was assuming that mobile home parks would be redeveloped, but now we actually have preservation zoning for all of the mobile home parks in the city. So we understand this is an important housing stock, and we're doing what we can to preserve it. We've had one mobile home park that actually was able to become owned by a nonprofit, and hopefully someday will be owned by the residents that live there. So that is one of the best models for mobile home preservation, and we're looking at what we can do to support that. Also, John wanted me to mention, especially to the comment in the back, that the Affordable Housing Board welcomes people to come and talk about their housing challenges and successes. First Thursday of the month at 4 o'clock. Usually it's at 222 LaPorte, although lately it's been at 215 North Mason, so check the agenda for the location.
And it's online, so you can also zoom in as well. Just for that, just to touch on that 1 second, we actually had our state rep, Andrew Basenecker, was at our last meeting, and we specifically talked about what we could do to work with the mobile homes and the mobile home manufactured home process to keep it stable as they are working through some of the challenges at the state level as well. So great point, thank you.
Okay, last question.
I'm a teacher and I know how the hand works. So I followed the land use code, passing, unpassing, passing, pretty closely. I'll have to admit, I didn't read the whole thing. I don't have that sort of time, but we need to start with the basics, and I'm really concerned. Okay, first of all, yes, we need more affordable housing, We need housing that fits all of our needs as community members, but no one can give me a good answer about water. Where are we going to get increasing water supplies to let people live here without suffering without water?
Okay, I appreciate that water question. And that's part of our sort of holistic look at housing across the entire city, that none of this happens in silos. I will say when we talk to our water folks, we know that water is expensive. Water rights are expensive. They're hard to acquire. That's an impediment and a barrier for the creation of housing generally. Our folks say we have enough water to handle the build out and the people and the growth of the community, and so we haven't heard that as a concern from our water folks. But I am not a water expert, I will say that. I rely on our water experts that we have at the city, and they are involved in phase 2 of the land use code and are always involved in our development review processes. But we definitely appreciate that, and that'll be part of the conversation.
Yeah, I'll just add, every time we do development review for a new development project for housing or commercial project, we do look to see if they have water and that there's enough water to supply the project. So that is part of the development review process. That is checked before it's submitted to the decision maker for a decision.
Okay, so that is going to close this segment of our evening. We're going to get ready for the best part of it, your community conversation. Thank you again for your attention.